Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We have made it through a long 7 rounds of Swiss. We are now at the top 8 of the 2025 OP Cup. Lot of great opponents here looking for that top spot. Of course, we have Phil the King Keffer. We have a bunch of wonderful people. Phil did finish with the top round. I know we have Greg in there. We have Zach. We have Ricky. We have Justin Lawrence. And of course, Derek Bertrand as well, after a long, long day before, making it to the top 8 after winning the tournament the night before. Let's see how all this works out. And of course, we are moving forward. This is the 1 seed versus the 8 seed. Phil Keffer at the top of your screen playing the classic Lambo, of course, with any heroes. Big switch here as we move forward. And that would be Spawn, the Starjammer, Scarlet Witch, and Doctor Strange in reserve. Again, using any heroes, and of course that no activator event. On the flip side here, we do have Zach, and he is playing Beast the Brute, the Ray, Deja Thors, and Doctor Strange. We did see this earlier again in the round, as he is playing a draw 3 style deck with that Hell's Kitchen as well. Played that unique event in the first hand here, which is, of course, they must venture to, but of course, to give you all the strategy insights into the top 8, and of course, with top tier players, I have brought you one of them myself for some great strategy thoughts. Tyler Bertrand, thanks for joining me in the top 8 here at the OP Cup.
Hey, everybody. Good to be here, and can't wait to get into the playoffs here. Yeah, this is an interesting dynamic. Zach's had a really good tournament both days. He just bubbled off. He actually had a 6-2 record during the day before, and then just missed because only a couple didn't make it. So, and now that he's in another top 8, he's had a great showing.
Now,
And I like the deck that he's decided to play, along with that event that forces you to venture too.
Now, of course, no discards in this first round. Now, unique on the side of Phil Keffer, you did see him place that Fairy Protection on Team OP. Now, most times the Lambo, especially the Any Hero version, does play Lady of the Lake as their Cataclysm. So unique change here, looking for that extra defensive protection, as of course Any Hero is very light on the defense, but his team providing quite a bit. Let's see how this first round starts off. Now, of course, placing out, both trying to get a lot of war chests, the typical move of the Lambo here, try to get as much placement as possible and continue to move it forward. Both players, of course, venturing to due to the event. Now, unique how this is going to play out, because a lot of the times most people would place and run at least on one side of the board. Now, both of them having 2 venture. I could see this being a pivotal battle. What do you think, Ty?
Yeah, I agree. I think this now makes it play. Oh, and it looks like Phil just tried the Fortress, which is very interesting because I actually don't really like that play. Because Phil's got a negate, a spawn avoid, a Doc Strange avoid, and an 8 plays, which are all very dupable this early on. And I'm assuming he's running 3 copies of at least half of those.
Now, of
So
course,
I think
playing
that's
that
high
new
risk.
universe that seems high risk. Now, of course, having it in his first hand, he might have just thought, this is the moment to play it. I can place out and run. Of course, getting to play 7 of his 8 cards. Of course, that new universe being the last one there. Now, Nick did hold strong, Zach did hold strong on his side with the placement. Of course, getting as well 6 cards placed. Now, he does have access to that shield cache, which usually acts as an additional half card per round. So this is interesting as we move on. Now, a duplicate on both sides of the board, spawn 1 to 9, as well as the Doctor Strange 1 to 6 on Zach's side. Now, Zach starting to place some big cards. Both 9s from both of his characters coming out in the first 2 rounds. Now, of course, looking across the board, seeing that defensive shell as well as that draw 3, I think Zach might have a light uphill battle as how he's going to penetrate through that other team that Phil's running. Now, of course, placing that draw 3 on Shield's weapon cache, of course, the Scarlet Witch discard still allowed to discard that as it is an opponent discard. So not protecting that necessarily from anything major from Phil's side. Looks like we're going to get our first action rolling up here soon. both placing out, trying to get maximum war chest moving forward. That is the idea of the Lambo. Get those universe cards down, get the defensive special shell out, and then slowly try to whittle away your opponent.
What's interesting here is I actually think Zach's deck has more gas than the Lambo. I think the fact that he's got a draw 3 from the Ray, a draw 3 from Deja Thoris, he's got a giant defensive card, and if he draws Deja's mission card at the start, that's going to give him natural card advantage, plus a draw 3 from his battle site, and he even matches the fairy protection with Snake Marsden, essentially. So, I mean, I think this is actually going to be a tough one for Phil if Zach's deck's able to kind of put itself together and stay consistent and not end up duping the game out for him.
And I think, too, if Zach can really try to hold a defensive shell of his own through power cards and the Hell's Kitchen uber defensive feel, he might actually be able to, like you said, stay gas for gas with the Lambo. Now, Zach, of course, after that new universe, getting initiative, playing out his teamwork, trying to just poke away, attacking Starjammers, trying to get rid of Phil's big shotgun character. 1-6 avoid, of course, using it on a 6 is a perfect venture match. Following up with the multi 4 off of the teamwork.
Yeah, and the other thing about any heroes is the sooner you can get them to play their defense, the better for you. So if I were Zach, I'd be really trying to push to get that fairy protection off this hand. I would have even considered venturing 3 this battle just to do that. Because even if it's close enough that you keep it close, then at least you know that you're getting through key cards that you're not allowing him to set up and use those to gain momentum or to push a key battle when he decides to venture for the win when things are set up.
It would be a huge advantage to Zach if he could get Phil to play both that draw 3 as well as that fairy protection in this round. Of course, that being actually a lot of the big gas of Phil's deck. Now, Phil will be playing towards his big activator event, and of course, Zach will always have to have that in the back of his mind. But this is what I would actually look at as a very interesting round here. Looks like action is to Phil Keffer. He also ventured to this round, so both opponents feeling they are going to actually take this round from their opponent. Coming with this strength ally across the board.
I think in Phil's case, it's just with any heroes, you have fewer opportunities to play your cards, whereas battle sites give you a second chance to play a 1 per deck. With any heroes, once you have the card, you're stuck playing it. And I think because of that, you need to be put into situations where you have to play faster for that reason. Whereas battle sites have a little bit more time because of the redundancy on the activators.
Interesting 1 per deck coming from Phil's side. Phil not known to actually play finite power through spawn very often through his Lambo builds. Looks like Phil has started to manipulate the Lambo build to potentially start to work better in this new modern mixed environment. Now, of course, using that AG from Electra, as we mentioned, Hell's Kitchen having a lot of defensive options for Zach here to sort of stay pat and keep that defensive flow going. Let's see what his action is here. Now, this I think being very interesting. I could see an ally into the 9, trying to really sort of push some big defense. Now, of course, having that spawn 1 to 9 there on the side, you would like him to use it as you've already seen 1 duplicated this round.
Wow, he opts to play the draw 3. And there's a place negate, so I think he's assuming that will get negated. So I'm wondering what else he's trying to set up to burn off that negate. What I don't like about this is we haven't seen Phil dupe one of those yet. So there's you could potentially be doing him a favor by forcing it off this round if you don't have another big special to follow. Oh,
and that's a big power leech. That I was actually contemplating was actually going to come before that finite power, but it looks like Phil using very smartly to get that finite power to use up the AG. And then, wow, look at that.
That's a fairly difficult card for Hell's Kitchen once you play your Electra to defend.
21 points, 2 9s.
Wow.
Phil wondering how he's going to defend those 9s. Well, he doesn't have to anymore. That may have just swung this game in a huge way.
Game-winning power leech already. And the fact that he has a draw 3 placed is actually really massive. And the disadvantage now is just overwhelming.
Now, of course, Zach understanding that he is a draw 3 base deck and Phil not having access to a lot of negates per hand, often with only 1 from his character, and then of course the possibility of a random Merlin floating throughout his deck as well. Interesting round. I think Zack really playing any hero should have really kept Power Leech in the back of his mind. And of course, seeing how that game was playing out, maybe even allowing that finite power to hit.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a tough one because the thing about finite power is you still have the capability to throw cards through it. It does cost you two, but like he could discard two cards off the shield cache to throw an attack.
Now, of course, as they move into the next hand, Phil Keffer did have a 2-card advantage moving in. Now, he did duplicate his last, what I assume, is Spawn 1 to 9 in the third hand. So, Spawn actually not having any more defensive cards is really detrimental to Phil's deck and Lambo at this moment, as that truly is the defensive linchpin on the team. Of course, being 2 cards up at this moment, he may be able to play towards this event and end this game in a rather relatively early fashion. But of course, lots of gas still on Zack's side. You still have all of your draw threes available and definitely a little bit more power coming out of that Hell's Kitchen. This game is definitely not over. What do you think, Ty?
No, I agree. I think it's going to take Zach at least one hand to catch up to replace the stuff lost from the leech. I do think that duping that 1 to 9 is actually very bad because it is much easier to get over the 6 or less from Strange. And now just teamworks and follow ups tend to be the thing that any hero struggle the most with defending. So the fact that that's not there will allow those teamworks. And Zach's got very strong offsuit teamworks that he can throw. So assuming he doesn't need to defend his the offense Phil throws at him, Zach's going to have a good chance at pushing those teamworks through if he can dodge a confusion.
And of course, Zack not having first initiative is going to have to, of course, take a string or at least a couple hits his way first before he can get those off. Now, with everything playing out, as we entered this round, Phil Keffer did have a 2-card advantage. He did have 2 discards to Zack's 1, so that has been brought back to a 1-card advantage. But of course, that shield weapon cache just sitting there as a half-card advantage for Zack as well per round. So this is actually a lot closer than we think. 2 ventured on Phil's side, only 1 on Zack. Zack probably thinking, I don't have much defense to deal with whatever this first volley is.
I also noticed Zach has had nothing placed the Dark Beast or Beast of Brood, and like no negate at this point has been pretty detrimental because there's been a lot of stuff he's needed to negate already. And that Electra Avoid being used up this early too is another problem because that leaves the Enforcers as the only activator that can successfully defend against the target-based special, non-numerical special.
Zack getting a lot of his big attacks early, but not a lot of his card manipulation in his deck. Now, of course, it will come. Will his character survive to get there? Now, he really could have used an early Deja Void here to potentially avoid and stop all of this, or hopefully has another Electra roaming around where he can DB this special and stop this string coming forward. Now, the Lambo, of course, throwing nothing but teamworks and follow-ups, teamworks and follow-ups. It is what it's built for. It is what it is designed for, and we are seeing it in action right now. 6 energy teamwork coming across the board at Deja Thoris.
Yeah, the Lambo build in some ways to me is surprising because I just view Hercules as a superior character to Spawn in almost every way.
1 to 6 avoid.
And just putting Spider Woman in the back with the 9 or less and reversing that. I think that Hercules 7 is such a big card. And I just think he's just has much better cards than Spawn, but
follow up for multi. Now, of course, getting a +2 off that big 8 energy teamwork. So this is a 6 coming across the board. He elects to take the multi unique approach here. Now, of course, that 1 following up, putting on 2 colors that you're not going to really want to see.
Is that a duplicate 4? Is that a 4 energy place, the Scarlet Witch?
And of course, as we see Zack coming back across the board with Cheshire Cat here.
No, my mistake. That's a 6.
Looking to still apply this pressure onto the Starjammers. Phil understanding he's going to get a second card strung at him here. Potentially the 6 fighting for the kill off of Deja Thoris here. Or potentially a card from hand if he's looking to keep that war chest moving forward. Phil taking the intellect hit. Now, of course, Zack looking for what would be his best version of a kill shot here. And I could actually say maybe even using that 8 energy to get that last 1 to 9 or potentially the fairy protection could be a good thought here.
See, I would actually switch targets at this point. I would start attacking a different character and force you to have an open slot for KO pressure to avoid the fairy protection. It depends on how important it is for you to if it's going to defend a key card from your hand or not.
Interesting strategy here. Now, of course, Phil looking down at his board, he does have fairy protection. He does have the 1 to 9, both able to avoid that KO shot. The question is, does he want to use his big Cataclysm 1 per deck in this pivotal round? He decides to do exactly that. Starjammers will no longer be able to be attacked for the remainder of this battle, as Zack has nothing that can penetrate cards on the table. Now, of course, Phil deciding how he's going to volley back towards Zack here. This could be a pretty big moment where Zack is either going to have to take a few hits or have the right defense in his hand. Now, no strings being shown on Phil's side, so it'll probably just be a single card coming across the board, probably thinking that 2 intelligence to keep applying pressure on Deja. We'll see what his thought is.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's or something from hand. I think those are the 2 best plays. Now, those are fairly big teamworks that are going to be coming back at him, and I think he defends 1, but the second one might prove to be a problem.
And of course, that 1 right there sitting as the 6 strength followed by the 8. Of course, that 8 would then be bumped to that 10 over that 1 to 9. So, of course, Phil being a smart player, I'm sure can contemplate that and see that coming in the future, realizing he will be forced to take an 8 unless he has another defensive card in his hand, which would have to be Freya.
Yes, or confusion, but I think those are the 2 options. If I were Zack, I would save that until the next hand, until the fairy protection goes away, and use it as a kill shot on jammers.
Interesting move here. Now playing the energy card off Scarlet Witch, thus actually opening the path for that teamwork through her in this next attack. However, will Zack have the fortitude to hold strong and potentially be willing to lose Deja Thors? Oh, Snake Marsden with a quick move to end any more attacking on his character. No more KO pressure going towards Deja. Now, of course, Zack looking over there, sees Scarlet Witch opening, I believe.
Oh, and he throws it on spot. That's interesting because I think that 8 being used defensively is actually key, and I probably would have played the other teamwork first.
And of course, here we go. Now, 6 brute force being attacked towards Spawn. Spawn having both the 1 to 9 and the 8 available as defense. I think you might have been more viable going through a different source that did not have access to that initial place defense. However, we will see how this plays out for Zack in the next few cards.
Yeah, I don't know what the last card in his hand is either, so there could be something to do with that card that he's trying to set up that I'm not aware of.
Now, Phil, knowing he can't defend the 8, takes the 6 and actually moves forward, knowing he probably can't defend that 8, which is coming in as a 10 energy across the board, unless, of course, he has the Freya in his hand. Now, we will see, obviously, with the big 8 placed and a 1 to 9, it'll still be hard to penetrate through and finish KOing off Spawn in this round.
Yeah, Phil could just realistically take both of those hits and then just defend the rest of the 2 teamworks and assume Zack just doesn't have another attack in hand, and now he just needs to draw something decent to defend.
Select the Slain, looking at the top 5 cards of his draw pile, allowed to select one, reveal it to your opponent, and then place it in your hand.
Now, if I were Zack, I would not target Spawn with the other teamwork. I would throw that teamwork, and if I was planning to continue, I'd throw that on Scarlet Witch and force him to take one of those other hits.
Now, most people playing in the new game are not remembering that Select the Slain does state you must reveal the card to your opponent. Now, as of right now, Phil has not made his final decision. However, a reveal has not occurred yet. I wonder if Zack will omit that piece of information and not move forward and get that amazing reveal. He has revealed the card. It is a 6 combat, giving Zack that information. Now, of course, that would be a big defensive card available for that teamwork. However, if Zack had played that teamwork towards Scarlet Witch, that teamwork now sitting on Zack's side with that follow-up would have been very tough to sort of deal with on Phil's side. Of course, as you saw, he went and got a 6 combat, which Scarlet Witch can't even use.
Yeah, and in this case, that's why I would throw that teamwork on Scarlet Witch, like I had said originally. It just gives him one defensive option out of the 3, but no, he's deciding to just make him use the cards. He does have a fairly clear venture win, or forcing him to play the draw 3, though, this way. That's one way to do it, but I think he still would have done it the other way and then created a bit more damage for his effort.
As you mentioned, great idea, Zack, just trying to make Phil use all of his placed cards. However, of course, as you see, even though it's hidden under the fairy protection, there is a Starjammer's Draw 3 still on the table. Of course, if Phil can potentially win this round, he will only have 3 more venture to go and may end up just 1 or 2 more rounds away from the win. This is a pretty pivotal round that I think Zack really needs to sort of try to pull out here. But it doesn't look like he's going to have too hard of a spot. He will sort of see what happens with that draw 3 at one point, and I think it's going to determine what happens. Now, big 1 intellect. Phil didn't see that coming, the Invisible Man. Now, he must elect to defend that card or else Spawn is KO'd. A big venture swing there.
What a drag.
1, 2, and 8. You can almost anticipate you're going to see a draw 3 right now, as Phil needs to replenish his hand and actually get some more venture going across the table, as Zack currently has the win in this round. But not being able to stop that Starjammer's Draw 3 will be a pretty pivotal moment.
And I think it's very important when you're in these spots, when somebody ventures fairly big and you need to stop their momentum, you need to call their bluff on having the cards. You need to be willing to take hits in this spot and let him draw. Even if he keeps them all, you pass, take the 2, take another card, and then at that point, make sure that he's within 5 points and having 2 cards before you even consider conceding.
Starjammer's Draw 3 in play as predicted. Of course, 3 cards. He does not have to reveal these. He does have to discard any duplicates, though.
Any discards would be huge for Zack at this point. If he keeps them all, he's going to be in a difficult spot.
Now, of course, with a lot of the new rules, a lot of the cards can be held in these scenarios as unique bluffs. Yep. He does look like he holds all 3.
And see that this is where I would have passed first to make sure that these cards are playable. And he definitely had the points, but I still would have taken some hits.
Wow.
It was a crazy draw 3, actually. That's probably one of the biggest draw 3s I've seen.
Starjammer's 11, Starjammer's 8, a 7 power card, and of course, the 4 assist as well, or 7. Any character as
7, 7, 8, 11 was what was left in his hand, so that was
a lot of venture. Would have definitely taken that round. Now, the great thing about that is Zack has made him use his Cataclysm Fairy Protection, his Starjammer's Draw 3. He did just see 2 big Starjammer's cards go out as well as all of Spawn's 1 to 9. So if Zack can just take this round and potentially volley back, he might have it now.
Oh, that's just dream timing. That's just gross, because I think this would have been the battle where Zack could have potentially turned this around with the KO pressure and stuff, but that may have shut down his momentum.
And of course, Phil moving into this round with a 1 card placing advantage towards Zack. Now, of course, Zack does have that shield cash, so it acts roughly as a half card, so it's about 1 to a half. Now, of course, with no activators, he's not going to have to discard the activators. However, he will not be able to use them this round. So even though he could potentially hold them as a bluff purpose, I firmly believe you're about to see Phil push the last 3 here, knowing that the odds are Zack has 1 or 2 cards in his hand that are just unplayable, and that's probably all the advantage he needs to finish this game off.
The first action, if I were Zack, is to gamble on the fact that he doesn't have Freya, and I would immediately throw an 8 power card at a +3 to KO Jammers. I think that they're more important than Spawn at this point. Even a mistimed Raza could hurt you badly, and I think getting rid of the last 8 any power and most of the fighting aspect at this point, I think is important. He is choosing to play still, but that would be my first play, is high power card with the basic, forcing him to have the Pure Void.
Now, I think one of the brutal mistakes that might occur here is Zack, seeing that teamwork placed, might think, oh, he has to defend this and then the follow-up. However, not seeing the confusion come out from across the board might be the moment where he gets disoriented by his opponent? Let's find out. Of course, what is the first play? Phil will have initiative going into this round. Now, of course, looking at that deja avoid, stating avoid one attack, no additional attacks may be played afterwards. So, initially has the ability to cut down that initial first volley and play his own. However, I wonder if he falls into the trap of playing that teamwork instead of, like you said, going for that big kill over the top, knowing that Phil will literally only have one card in his whole deck that could potentially block that 11 attack.
Yeah, you really have to try to get rid of as much of his cards as you can by potentially stripping off that 2. Now, in this case, that Deja card is a big deal for this specific case. Like, I would, I would probably take this one and wait to see what the follow up would be. Depending on how much venture I had in my hand, a 6 is fairly high, but
I don't think you'd wait on this, only for the
you're
fact
right.
that I
Actually,
see the 2
being a kill
intellect.
shot, and yeah, you'd rather use this on the 6 than the 2.
And of course, being the last round, every point of venture counts. So knowing that 2 would be the kill shot, use it on this, avoid the 6, take the venture swing, and now get your volley back.
Yeah. And that's exactly
Friends,
why
we did not see this game. It is exactly what we just said, though. That was a trap he set for himself, not understanding that a card across the table, he could have finished this off, I'm assuming, with a big either 7 or 8 energy in his hand. He might not have either
even
to have gone over the top.
Power to make a 10 to KO Spawn at this point, I think would be just as important to get rid of his 8 power card.
And of course, Phil showing that he had multiple teamworks in his hand. And now it looks like Zack probably running into a situation where a single play might have actually changed this whole game.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that at this point, he doesn't really care if he loses Deja Thoris, assuming he has no Deja cards in hand right now. I think the fact that she's the target is just affecting Venture more so than anything long term now that we've seen the Avoid come out.
So that's a Zeus 6. We still have not seen whether or not Zack is holding that 7 or 8 in his hand that would have actually penetrated over the top for that kill shot. Looks like Phil Keffer, just with teamworks and power cards, knew he was going to get a lot of his strings out ahead of time here. And of course, just playing towards that advantage. If this 5 hits, he will be at 7 venture currently.
Yeah, this is a bit tough, but I think this is still very playable. Again, these cards are fairly low. I think the fact that 2 cards add up to 7 at this point is not the end of the world.
Well, and Zack still having all 3 of his draw 3s available could easily just swing this hand with one of those 3 cards, knowing that there's probably not a Merlin or a Negate across the board.
Yeah. I mean, he has spent the Ray one. He used that when he burned it into a Negate early on. But other than that, the Kingpin one should still be available.
Well,
the Deja one at this point is not, but that's okay.
So sitting at 7 points, this looks like Zack really needs to make some smart decisions here.
Well, actually, the Kingpin one's unplayable due to and he had the 8. So, I mean, this should have been his play immediately. If this is successful, then yeah. So this should have been the play that he did right off the bat. I don't think he realized that this is undefendable for an anti-hero deck under these circumstances. Because had he done that, he would have. I just really hope he doesn't lose this game by 2 venture.
So Zack spotting that big 11 over the top. Now, as we just mentioned, Phil having nothing but teamworks and power cards, which is exactly what the Lambo does. Now, of course, still having 2 opponents, this teamwork is playable in this round. Now, follow up to this being, of course, 8 on one side, and of course, on the other side, you now have 13 points. So 8 to 13. This would make 8 to 19. Zack just reeling with that beast negate with nothing to use it on.
Yeah, Zack needs a lot of power cards himself. If he's got enough to retaliate with, he'll probably be okay. Because he did knock out Phil's 8 with that, which means that's not playable anymore.
Hell's Kitchen, one of the bigger venture power sites that you actually have going on in the game. A lot of large attacks coming out of there as well.
And now Phil can't play any fighting anymore, so if he does have any fighting left in hand, that's not playable through Scarlet Witch. He has played most of the cards for Jammers and Spawn. It's mostly Scarlet Witch cards left in the deck, but...
if Zack could pull through, fighting teamworks or combat teamworks as well as all combat power cards will have to be discarded.
Yeah, it's going to come down to how many activators Zach has left in hand. If and I would not have defended that.
And of
I would have
course,
taken the 2 venture. And he
and
had
an
2
activator,
activators.
and it looked like actually that Deja card, which earlier in the tournament you saw he couldn't get off as well. Curious to see if that Deja card continues to see a lot of play as tournaments go on. Well, that looked like what the Lambo does, and Phil pushed his foot down on the pedal and never let up. Zack, of course, having a deck that really had an opportunity and shot to go against him, but I think misplaying that teamwork into that confusion was really a pivotal moment. Now, however, as we did see, really was just teamworks and power cards coming from Phil in that last round. So he may have actually still been able to get a lot of them out. However, you will never know. And of course, great round, great tournament, Zack. Keep up this great play, and you will slowly see yourself win a tournament in the future. Of course, Phil Keffer moving on into the semifinals. We will see how he does continuing on to this tournament. Ty, again, thank you for the great strategic approach and view on this game, and we will see you in the semifinals. Any final thoughts, Ty?
No, I think that was a great game, and I think that was overall like we kind of called the play out before it happened with that basic universe interaction. I think it's very important to know that when you can count the opponent's defense, that you have to be very on top of what they've used and what they haven't, and just one card versus 2 cards can sometimes be a giant difference. I think this also came down to if Phil's event doesn't show up that hand, Zach would have had some breathing room, but the cards just lined up for him in a great way with them sequentially just kind of turning off every counter that Zach had each time he had it. So
I actually could have saw maybe this game maybe being a little bit different, as maybe Zack should have played a little bit more of that first round,
yeah,
and played the game out and sort of put a little bit of KO pressure on the Lambo early in the game, where it might have came back around and given him a little bit more advantage in round 3 or 4. Again, great play by both players. Great tournament by both players. I'm sure you will see them again as we move forward. I Thanks again for joining us. This has been Marcel and Ty, and that, of course, is the quarterfinal. See you in the semis.
thanks everybody.